Welcome to the virtual towers of Binary Arcadia, where the games go on long into the night. Hello Barcadians, you're joining us for another Barcade update video today, and I've been given the privilege of introducing this one. I also think Rich is throwing me a bit of a bone because, as you might well know, I've not been heavily involved in the last few videos. So just to give you an idea and a bit of a breakdown as to what's going on in today's video, it's going to focus on breaking down the speakers and fitting the speakers. It's going to look very closely at the linear actuator design and carriage. We're then going to nip over to the screen and exactly how we're going to fit that and assemble that. And we also have a bit of a stretch goal now, thanks to I think he's a Barcadian, but just a nice chap generally, Michael Harker, who reached out to us on a Facebook group and was able to help us implement something very cool that we have planned for the linear actuator. But more on that in the discussion piece at the end of the video. So, without further banging on, we'll hand over to Rich and get this show on the road.
Right, it is linear actuator carriage time. Now, I think it's been mentioned a few times that space is at a premium on this one, so I'm having to be quite ingenious in how I'm going to fit everything in. So, what have I done so far? So you can see here, these are the cable outs, so we've got, or in, so we've got power in, HDMI out, USB out, USB out. They were something that we found that for one of the subscribers, or a comment from somebody that actually it's going to be easier to have them to put keyboard and mouse in, so that's done. We've got concealed hinges left and right, as close to the edge as I can go sensibly. They're set 6mm in. I've screwed my draw runners on, and I've literally to come up with a position on these, I've taken the linear actuator and I've positioned it on the board, so I know it's 40mm wide, so it's going to sit in the middle. It has a bracket that goes on the bottom, so I've positioned it so that where that's going to go, so that will go like that. This will attach to the carriage. No, I'm not sure how at the moment, but I will come up with a way. And then from that, I've taken a controller and I've placed a controller in between the lines I've marked for this and the hinge, and that gives me a center line of the controller stacks. I've used the center line as the centers of the draw runners, and you'll see why in a moment. So as we said, space is a particular premium on this project, with the screen and all the stuff we've got going in. And I don't really have space for the draw runners. So what I'm doing is I'm going to need to manufacture it so that the controllers sit within the void created by the draw runners. So in doing that, I created this template. So this is a prototype. It's two 40mm holes, and then they're joined together with the router to create basically a void that the controller can sit in, so that when it clips in, it can sit behind in the void of the draw runners. So that's fine, and the concept works fine, but I need to revise it. So from this concept, which I know will work, but the shape's not quite right, I'm about to make this. So this is my new concept. So each controller will have this cut out, and this will allow me to clip the controller in and it sits within that void. So that is the next process. I need to make this as a template, and then I'll use that to put the holes in the carriage which I made earlier. So let's get to it. Right, so I drilled the holes, joined them up with the router, and then realised the controller still doesn't fit in. So the shape got even more complicated with another hole that then joins up to the previous hole. And then that gives us this, basically. Quite a complicated shape, and this will basically be the template I'll use to put all of the holes in for the controllers. But as you can see, that will sit on there, on the draw runner, and then the controller sits through, so it's in the void, and it will be held in place by the charging cable, which will be captivated in a piece of wood, still to be confirmed. So now my job is to take my drawer carriage, and you can see I've already marked this out. Center lines of the drawer runners, so that gives us a center line of the template, and then where I want the edges of the holes to be. So then it will be a case of dropping this on, clamping it on, and running my profiling route a bit around this to cut the shape. Yeah, wish me luck. So things have moved on quite a bit. What I've done, so as you know, I was going to cut the router out, the controller cutouts, which I've done, all 4 of them there you can see. I've routed a strip, which is basically what the controller will sit on, and it just so happens they're the exact centres of the drawer runners, which gives me something for the screws for the drawer runners to bite into. Then I have taken a piece of pine, I have routed it down by 2mm to get it to, this is 18mm and I needed it to be 16mm, so I've routed it down to 16mm, and then I've routed a 12.7mm hole along the middle, or slot along the middle. Then I've cut it into 40mm lengths to get me these pieces, which I have screwed on. Now, this is how this is going to work. So, the charging lead will be bonded into there with a little cap on top, probably some more 6mm MDF. The controller, and these will go down to a central charging station. The controllers will clip in like so, and that's what will hold the controllers. So imagine there's 4 controllers there with the cables coming down, like so. And then as the linear actuator actuates, the carriage will come up, opening the flap at the top, which will be sprung loaded, and will come up and comes out 250mm. And at that point you can grab your controllers. Controller removal is just the same, so because this is bonded in, you literally just pull it up and it's away. So that is where we're up to. So next job, I need to cut out the section for where the drawer runner, where the linear actuator is going to sit, which will be in the middle here. 35mm slot basically all the way up in the centre. And then I think we may be able to test the actuator. Right, so quick sit rep. So I have added the slot for the linear actuator to go in, and I've added 2 holes for the bracket. Now, I've had to take the standard bracket that looks like this, and I've had to cut it down with an angle grinder to this. So we've gone from this to this, and I've added 2 holes, well I've added 1 hole as you can see, and then this piece will now bolt on underneath here so that the linear actuator can basically join onto it, and that moves it up and down. I've taken a little video for this, so take a watch. So then that concludes the linear actuator outside of the cabinet. So now we need to move on to having it all inside the actuator and testing it from there. Right, it's now time to fit the screen. So what I've done is I've suspended the BArcade over the table and my workbench so I can line the screen up exactly in the opening for it. And with the hole I've cut in the back, I've cut 2 slats to run across, which have got penny washers and M4 screws going into the screen. And then at either side I've cut 2 smaller pieces of wood which, as you can see, I've screwed into this piece of wood and I'm about to screw into the sides. It's quite difficult to get into the screws in that, so that's the next job. But the reason I've suspended it over the trestles while I'm doing this is so I can get underneath, I can see exactly the screens lined up, and then obviously drive the screws in. So I'll get this finished, because there's not really a lot to see on this bit other than me just screwing some screws in, and then I'll show you the finished result.
Hi everybody, Tabs here, going to get my hands dirty for a change on the BArcade project at Rich's house. Come to visit him for the weekend. So, you'll have just seen, hopefully in a clip prior to this, Rich and I enjoying the talents of these little Logitech speakers we picked up on eBay. I think around about £10 they were, so pretty good deal really. I think they retail for about 35 quid and they should serve for us, and they've got a nice bit of bass as well. So what I'm going to do is, on Rich's direction, I'm going to take the bases off these speakers and then proceed to saw around the the edge or perimeter or circumference of each of these speakers to try and crack them open. I've got a few tools at hand. I've got a couple of different types of saws, and then we do have a Dremel, which we have tried, but there's some noxious plastic fumes going on, so we're going to see if we can do it manually first, and yeah, we'll see how successful this will be. Hopefully I don't completely destroy them, because, you know, like I say, they're pretty good. So away we go. Right, so I've now got the base off, a few minutes work, so that was good, and we're just going to cut a line across here now, and basically just follow it all the way around to kind of half it, if you like, and fingers crossed we'll then be able to see in, kind of find out what we're dealing with, the gubbins inside, and how we can remove them. So again, away we go. Right then, so that's what we're dealing with. It's a pretty good outcome for us. We've just bent this bottom bit, and we can see that there's just two nice easy screws to take out. And that speaker will hopefully just pop out. There's some glue to deal with there, but I'm sure we can find a way around that. So here we go. So here we go, guys, with Rich's help there, just to kind of persuade it out of that casing. You can see the speaker, which is it's actually a really nice size. We're really happy with that. Nice and small, micro, but at the same time, you know, we know it packs a bit of punch, so fabulous. So we're going to crack on, and we're going to crack this one open now in exactly the same way, hopefully, just as successfully, we hope. Right then, so we're on to the sub now, which should be a much easier task because, well, it's just screwed in, we hope, for the main part. So we're going to try and remove this backing, this kind of control panel, the speaker itself, these feet, and we're going to do our best to see if we can salvage anything from this because it's got a nice volume control which is useful on and off and headphone attachments, so it might be nice to have options on the BArcade. So let's get stuck into this. There's another little circuit board in there we need to get to, so we're going to have to take a little section out of this casing just to get enough play in there to get a screwdriver in. So a little bit more work than we'd estimated, but let's get cracking. Sore, isn't it?
Right, I think it looks like it's 2 screws at the top and it's in the slot at the bottom.
Right, so more sawing abound. We've managed to get the other circuit board off now, which you can see hanging around, but we need to kind of feed the speaker through here because it's all been kind of glued together and we can't really disconnect any of these cables, unfortunately. So here we go. Right, so here we go, we can extract all of the gubbins. We'll take these feet off now with the potential that we might use them, although we have bought our own. And we'll just have a ponder about this guy and see what we want to do with it. So yeah, we're on the final stretch now. We're just going to take these feet off and then I will show everybody what we've managed to destroy. Which is looking pretty good, nice and compact now. It's been removed from all these components, these housings. Right, so that's all done. We'll pop this away and we'll show you what we've managed to dig out of those speakers. So here we are. They need a bit of a brush down, but these are the precious cargo that those housings were carrying. So, as I say, nice and compact. We can certainly save some room in the cabinet now that we've taken them out of the housings. It's pretty much over to Rich now to design a way to put these in the cabinet in such a manner that it's nice and yeah, so it's nice and aesthetically pleasing, and you know, looks like a one piece as opposed to a Frankenstein's monster as it is. So yeah, thank you Logitech. I'm sure we've voided our warranty at this point in time, but you know, it's for a good cause. On to the next.
So following on from Tabsy's removal of the speakers from their housings, I've added the bass speaker into the base, which I've literally just jigsawed a round hole basically, and that just sits in there, similar to how I've done the other stuff. Pilot drill first, run round the circle with the jigsaw, simple enough, and then just so that then sits away from the table that it's sitting on or surface, we've added these little rubber feet. So I've added them on. I've also added, I just need to turn this over. So I'll just lean that back so you can see better. But basically, the speakers, so you've got the sub at the bottom, and then the left and right speaker are at the front. We were planning to put them in here, like facing downwards, but we've just not got enough space with the marquee, so we've decided to put them here and have some little grills over the front. So much the same as I've done with lots of the other stuff, I've literally drilled a hole and then just screwed it in from the back. I've had to do a little bit of shaping top and bottom just with a rasp, and that's that basically. So that leaves us with needing to create some sort of access panel to get into the unit. I've designed the base so that the base can actually unscrew from the bottom, but we don't really want to have to get in and out of the unit via that. So currently I'm adding a big cutout to the back of the unit. Hopefully you can see I've marked out here a rectangle which we're going to cut out. Unfortunately, lots of arcade machines have the whole of the back cut out, but because of the fact that we've got the carriage for the linear actuator pot here, there's no point cutting that out there. They won't be able to get to anything. So I've marked out where I want to cut, I've drilled holes in the corner, and now all I've got to do is join that with a jigsaw. So I'll just show you me doing that. So because this won't be seen, because of the fact that it's going to be covered by another panel, probably a very thin sheet of something, I'm just going to use the jigsaw. Simply because I'm not too bothered if the edge is a little bit rough, because you're not going to see it. So let's get away. And there we have it, one cutout. Simples. I have added 2 magnets, which I've drilled the holes for and concealed them in the unit, as you can see, and that is so that I can get this delightful panel which I made at work and clip it on. Right, so I've pretty much finished the cabinet now. There's a few bits left to do, namely the two buttons. So I'm going to be talking about the hotkey button, which is the one that we're having a 3D printed logo for. And if you'll remember, I had drilled a 35mm hole in the top. That's what size the button's going to be. And what I've done is I've cut this piece of the plywood and I've attached that under the side, and then I've drilled another 35mm hole, and that basically gives us an additional depth. So we've now got 24mm worth of depth. I've made this piece of tube at work. Now that is basically a piece of 35mm diameter round tube with a 2mm wall, and it's capped off with a piece of plate, a few little tacks, and dressed off. And that will sit in from the other side, which needs a little bit of tweaking. It's a little bit tight at the moment, so I need to tweak it a little bit. So that'll sit in from the other side. I've then made another piece which is going to screw onto this plate once I take it off, and that is this piece. Now this piece is basically a couple of pieces of pine I've cut to length, another piece of plywood, as you can see, which I've screwed together, and that's got a hole in to allow for a button to sit in, like so. So this button will sit inside the cradle like this. This will then sit on top of this like so. And then when you press the button, the little pin that sticks out the back, which is not in at the moment, will press this button. And then with the Pi software, we will just program it that when this button gets pressed, that's the hotkey. So I've got a little bit more work here to do, screwing this piece onto this piece, and then I can screw it on, and then I can get the spring that's going to be on this switch that basically means that it stays upright, and then I'm done on this piece. And then we're very, very close to starting painting, which is getting towards the end of the project, so good times. Right, the very last thing I've got to do before I can start doing the painting and finishing of this project is to put the cutouts in for the flip up like handles that we're going to have on the side. So that's the handles we've chosen. They're all black, so they'll match in nicely, and they're sprung loaded, which is nice. So they're going to sit roughly here. So what I've done is I've marked on, they've got like a little shoulder on the back. So I've measured that, and I've marked out where I want that to go. I want it to sit 50mm or 2 inches in all the way around. So all that remains to do is drill a hole in each corner so I can get the jigsaw in and literally cut it out. Let's get on with it. So 8mm hole in the corners. Now of course this cutout's going to be hidden, so it's not critical that it's super neat. So that's my holes, quick clean up. Now let's chop it out. Now you might be able to hear that I'm feathering the throttle on the jigsaw. I just find you get a little bit more control if you're easing on and off of the power. So that's the cutout, so quick sand up on that. Take any sharps off, same on the inside. And now just to check that it fits. Beautiful. And there we go. So that'll allow us to flip the handle up and then carry it around.
All right then, Rich, you handled that one pretty well, I thought. Oh dear.
Pun intended.
Pun absolutely intended. Yeah. What should we do then? Should we just talk through and summarise what we've done in this video and a couple of the things we've got on the slow burn for the next one?
Yes. So as you can see, we managed to implement and have a fully working linear actuator. Space was a concern. I think some people may have commented that they thought maybe we would struggle for space, which we've actually managed to do all right. Actually, we'd have had to be quite cunning, which I think you've seen on the video just been shown, that there wasn't really space for like runners and controllers and stuff. So we've had to get a little bit cute with how we've implemented them. But
and speaker placement had to be changed, didn't it, because of that issue, which isn't a big issue, but.
Yeah, so we originally wanted it sort of pointing downwards from the bottom of the marquee, didn't we, Tabs? So that it would, present the sound nicely while you were playing it, but it just turned out there just wasn't enough space, basically. So they've moved down to the front, but actually, I think the way we've implemented them with the little BA grills on them, I think they'll look quite cool. And I think if you noticed on the screenshot I showed of that in place, I've actually bought some little brass pins that will knock into those holes, so you'll get that like detail of almost industrial look to it. So I
like
think
rivets.
Quite cool. Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about that kind of porthole effect of it, didn't we? Which I think will look really cool. I like that.
Definitely. And then what else did we do? Fitted the screen. Well, that was easy. Wasn't really too much trouble there. And then what else did we do, Tabs? We
had a little dance off.
We had a little dance
off.
Yes. And fitted the sub in the bottom of it. Fitted the handles. There wasn't much. The linear actuator was the big complex piece in this, although I think there could have been issues breaking down the speakers, but it went all right, didn't it, Tabs?
Yeah. I mean, got my hands dirty on that one, and I don't know. You'll see my little stress face come out a little bit, and thankfully off camera for the most part. I don't think you see on it, but you were orchestrating each and every move. But yeah, it was nice to be involved a bit more, and a bit more of an unusual thing to do. But yeah, they seem to have survived.
Yeah, actually, we had a stroke of luck there, didn't we, Tabs? Because we wondered whether the speakers would be in some way bonded into the housings, and actually they were all screwed in. So once we'd got the housings apart, broken down, it was just a case of removing some screws, and that got us the pieces required. So that was a bonus, really.
I think the trickiest thing was the sub, wasn't it? In the end, we thought that was going to be easiest; it'd just fall out in one piece, but it was a bit of a bodge in there, wasn't it, when we got inside it? But,
yeah, because although the speaker came out easily, there's a couple of circuit boards in there, which obviously that's sort of the sound card that deals with it. Well, they wouldn't come out through the holes, so we eventually had to break the sub down a bit. But yeah, we got there in the end. It was a little more challenging for you maybe because of that. It wasn't as straightforward as we thought, but we got there.
I was mildly hungover at the time after a catch up on the Friday, so if I can do it mildly hungover, then anybody can.
and then moving forwards, what have we got to look forward to in the update number 4? So next up is the unenviable task of painting it, which I have to say I'm really not looking forward to. It's just a long, drawn out process. And the
basis for that is, Rich, because to get a really nice finish, it takes patience, does it? Each stage, you're kind of putting a layer on, sanding it again, putting another layer on, sanding it. Is that the gist of it?
Absolutely, mate. So I haven't at this point, actually, but I will have sanded the wood down to a 200 grit sanding pad, which gives it a real glass-like feel to it. I'm then going to put an undercoat on it. There's a few little blemishes that I need to deal with in the wood. There's a slight split in one of the faces of one of the pieces of wood, which I need to put a bit of filler on, which I'll be able to see better how to do that once I've got the undercoat on. Then it's a case of like rubbing it down, painting more undercoat, then rubbing it down, then top coat, then rubbing it down, top coat, and then...
Are you going to spray it, did you say? You're looking to get some like...
Yes, I
pretty
think...
good grade spray paint, are you?
Yes, I think I'm going to paint it with like what I call rattle cans, sort of, car rattle can paint, just because I've used it before on some wooden projects I've done, and you get a really nice finish with it. You have to take your time, and it's probably not the cheapest way of doing it, but I think it'll give us the best, most durable finish in the outcome.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's the plan on that. And then I guess
are we going for like a semi matte, or is it satin? You call it? Satin
yeah. So I would call it a satin or a semi gloss finish. So it's like not super glossy, it's not matte, it's sort of halfway in between, which should look quite nice. Shouldn't show too many of the undulations and fingerprints. Yeah. So and then after that it will be a case of assembly. I don't know whether we'll do assembly and painting in one video or whether they'll be separate. I guess it depends how interesting the painting is. Not very, is my guess.
Well, should we take this opportunity as well to shout out and elaborate on what we mentioned in the introduction? So Michael Harker's input. So basically Michael Harker, I reached out to him on a Facebook group, I think for kind of Pi projects. Generally kind of DIY Pi, Retro Pi, Raspberry Pi projects, and he's actually written a bit of code for us. I can't remember, is it Python it's called, the kind of the app or the program that runs this code? Yeah. But Rich, you're much better at this technical stuff than me. Do you want to just explain what exactly it's going to do? So
we finished up the actuator, and I sent Tabs a video. And then collectively we said, wouldn't it be nice if it played some music when it was actuating? Because it's fairly...
Not the Beach Boys, by the way, but anyway.
So it's fairly noisy, although it'll be less noisy when everything's together. So we were like, okay, well, how can we make that work? So that's when Tabs reached out on this Facebook page and said, can anyone help? And this chap... amazingly said, I can help, I can write you a bit of code. So in essence it's as I understand it, so we'll still have the switch that actuates the actuator, but then that when the switch is active there'll be a relay which sends a signal to the Pi, and then this piece of code that this chap's written is then monitoring this, and when it is when it has the right signal, it will play a song on the Pi through the speakers in it. That's how I understand it.
Which we want to be the famous Zelda chest opening kind of soundbite, don't we?
Yeah.
We're very attached to that as Zelda fans, and just be a nice little piece. I suppose though the thing is it's a movable feast, isn't it? We can change it depending on
definitely
what we like, and if we preferences change. So
I wonder if we can make it so that I'm guessing maybe that's why it needs two relays, one for outward bound, one for inbound, because it's a different signal input, because it's a twin circuit really. And I wonder whether maybe we could have a different sound for it going in, so maybe it's like the game over screen or something.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Or Link screaming. You know how he does sometimes.
Oh god. Ah!
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, I need to dig out, and I'm sure we'll be back in touch with Michael Harker. But Michael, if you are watching, please do drop us a comment on the channel, because we're definitely going to have to tie back up with you when it comes to properly implementing it, I think.
Yeah, because
as you might tell, Rich and I are a bit duncy about it.
Yeah, because I need to procure a couple of these relays, and probably need to come up with a wiring diagram for it. But anyway, that's sort of right at the end of the project, I guess. So Yeah, what else? Did we have any challenges on this one? The only challenge that I found on this one was the hinges that I decided or had like chosen to use. They just didn't work. They didn't allow for the top to open properly. So then I had
Are these the hinges because they kind of snap, don't they? They snap into a couple of different articulations, do they?
So basically, you need a hinge that like allows it to open like away from the unit, and what I'd got sort of it opens away from it, but it opens like inboard to itself. So it meant that where the angles were, it was like trying to open onto itself. So I found these. They're actually kitchen cupboard hinges, but they're the ones designed for when you have like very high-end kitchen cupboards where the cupboards are like mitered into it, and that meant that it like throws it further out, which I think you've seen in the video. That's how they work basically. But yeah, so that was really the only challenge we had in this update.
No, you've bossed it like a pro, mate. Never any doubt on that front. I mean, just from my side, very briefly, I've more or less put together a list. Was it Glenn Chug, was it Rich, who'd shouted at us on that? And I said
yes.
It might be worth starting to look at putting a list of games together because it took him 2 or 3 months to do so.
Yes.
So I've been doing that, in the background, every now and again, just kind of finding a new console. I'm not quite there. I think I've maybe got 2 more consoles I want to go through and kind of made, I don't know, they range from like top 10s to top 20s. In terms of the games, but I think I'm close to a point where it feels fairly solid. And again, this is probably going to be something which is a movable feast and we can kind of modify to our heart's content on, but I think I've got a nice kind of fixture at this point that we can work from, so that's positive. On the retro Pi side, I've actually just checked tonight, but as far as I'm aware, again, there's no official image out for retro Pi for the Pi 4. Although I have a feeling it must be weeks away at this point. I understand there's quite a few unofficial images out there, which, just because I'm a proper novice, I don't want to get too tangled in at the minute. I'd rather wait for that official drop. And of course, because the project from Rich's side has still got some legs to go with it, I don't think there's any major pressure there to kind of force it.
No, not at all.
So yeah, that's kind of an update from the software side, but yeah, shortly I suppose, Rich, it will be kind of over to me. Pressure on from my side. That no doubt I'll rope you into it though as I flounder and
Definitely.
everything goes pear-shaped.
This project's all about teamwork. You'll come into your own, I'm sure, once we get to the bit that sort of we dished out to you, sort of thing.
Crossing my fingers.
Yeah, you'll be fine, mate. So yeah, that sort of concludes where we're up to on the Barcade. It's coming along. I have to say it's taking a little bit longer than we thought, or I thought, I guess. I thought I might get it done by the end of September, but this game called Death Stranding keeps popping up everywhere, and it just ties me up for days. So
we always knew in terms of games it was going to be a busy end to the year, didn't we? I mean, we've had Link's Awakening, Astral Chain recently.
Yeah.
We've got some reviews we're trying to get out for those, and it's only getting worse. It's only going to get worse, I think, with the end of the year coming.
But it's quite cool. It's cool to have a buzz in the games industry. Sometimes you think, blimey, like earlier on in the year, it seemed like there wasn't that much going on. But yeah, it's cool that there's a nice buzz again, and we're gearing up next year for new consoles. So we'll get this project done and dusted, hopefully. Yeah, in the next few weeks. I'd like to at least get it all together, buttoned up, waiting for the electrics or the Pi side of things. Sort of, certainly by November, I'd like to see it done and dusted. I don't know about you, Tabs.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, no pressure from my side because, this was always going to be a bit of a dribbler of a project, wasn't it? Just because of everything else we're trying to spin. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it's coming on, mate, and just excited, I'm sure, like the rest of the Barcadians, to see the finished product.
Yeah. Definitely.
And on that, I suppose, just to reach out to the Barcadians and say, any comments you got, any questions for Rich, any suggestions or input that you'd like to add, we absolutely invite it. You know, we said right from the start we want this to be, you know, something of a collaborative project where we try and feed as much as we can from everybody into it, and you know, even directly things like, well, Michael Harker, Raid PW and his 3D printed button, you know, just to mention a couple of things are already coming in from the community to kind of bolt onto it, which is just amazing. So yeah, I mean, I think we're ready to wrap up on that. Rich, is there anything more you wanted to say?
No, the only thing I wanted to say is on this update I've maybe skimmed over a little bit of the detail, but what I've tried to do is if I've already shown how I drilled a hole, then I've just assumed that it's obvious how I've drilled a hole, rather than showing me doing lots of things I've already showed being done, if that makes sense. So I've showed myself drilling a hole, I'll just go, I've drilled a hole, rather than showing me drilling a hole again.
Well, I think that makes absolute sense, mate. And again, if anybody does want to ask any questions, you know, following on from that to Rich, just give us a shout. Or if you want to tell us, you know, if you want to give us any input on the next video and how we should do it differently, always open to that too. So
definitely,
yeah, please feel free. But if you did like this video, please give us a like, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do, as long as you liked it anyway. Again, we're always open to feedback, so hit the dislike if you weren't too keen on it, but just drop us a comment to let us know exactly what it was that you weren't keen on. And yeah, you know, ring that bell for notifications once you do subscribe, to make sure you stay abreast of everything Rich and I put out there. And feel free to share any video with friends, or, you know, on other social media sites if you think somebody else might get a kick out of it too, because it really helps to grow and support the channel. And I think that's probably about it, Rich. Another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.